guys, it is Aoife from Fred Weasley Died Laughing, and I'm here with another weekly wrap up. So I got a good few books read this week. I don't know how, but I just read a lot. And I'm just going to quickly get into the book. I finished this on Monday, and it is Empress by Karen Miller. This is the first book in the Godspeaker trilogy, and this is a high fantasy about a young girl called Heycat, and about her journey. Basically, she is sold as a slave, and she has to travel to this other big huge city, which is very, very far away from the village that she grew up in. She grew up in a society where women weren't even given names, let alone any other kind of rights, and she's kind of decided that she is going to make herself better, and she is going to become really like powerful and fearing. And yes, so this was pretty interesting. I kind of liked the world building. I liked hearing a lot about the certain religion that these people followed, because it was very real to them. They were really like, when the god spoke to them, he really actually did speak to them. He really did kind of show himself through them. Or I should say it, because they actually don't give the god a gender. It's it. But overall, I had to give this a 2 stars because for a main character, Heycat is very, 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 very horrible. I really, really didn't like her. She was arrogant. She was just a big bitch, to be quite honest. She was a really, really horrible character, and after a while, this is a lengthy book, this is almost 700 pages, so 700 pages of Heycat basically just being an absolutely awful person to everyone that she meets, and thinking that she can get her own way all the time because, you know, she is touched by the god or whatever it is that they say. It kind of gets old fast, so I was actually planning not to pick up. I have the other 2 books in the series and that I got in like a book fair for really, really cheap, and I was kind of, after about like 400-500 pages, I was saying I don't think I will continue on with the series. But the second book actually follows a completely different character on a completely other different side of this world to Heycat, who's kind of like going to be her enemy, I guess. So I am really looking forward to actually reading that and seeing if I like that a little bit better, because I did like the writing, and my main problem was just that I really, really, really hated the character. So I think if I hopefully like the next character a little bit more, I can get on with the writing a little bit better. So I gave it a 2 stars, 2.5 stars, and yeah. And the next book I finished was All the Ugly and Wonderful Things by Bryn Greenwood. I'm not really going to talk about that, but I did do a separate video review for it, and I will link that somewhere up above, and I gave this 5 out of 5 stars because I absolutely loved it. The next book I finished was a bit of an impromptu read. I was just kind of scanning through my library ebooks on my mobile, and I came across this book that I knew I wanted to read because I'd read the first book, so I ended up downloading it onto my phone, and I actually read it within like 2 days. I think it was actually like a day and a half. I just couldn't put it down, and it actually proved to me that I can read books on my phone because I've never really tried that before, and it ended up working out really well for me, so that was good. So this book was called Grounded, and it's by Sheena Wilkinson. It is about a boy. It's the second book in a series called the Declan Kelly series, I think it is. Yeah, and the first book was about this boy who went to live with his cousin while his mum was recovering from I think it was a drug overdose or alcohol addiction, and he lived in this really rough part of Belfast, and he ended up accompanying his cousin to the stables where she kept her horse, and he ended up finding that he has an affinity with horses in a really special kind of way with horses, and he's a very, very natural rider and is able to, you know, ride really, really well, and like competition style and stuff like that. So he ends up getting into that in the first book, and the second book just follows on with him. It's a few years later. He's like 2 years old. I think he's 19 now rather than 16. So it's just kind of following where he is at, and I did enjoy this. There was a lot more of an emphasis on the streets he grew up in and his community, I think, more so than there was in the last book. There was this big other kind of side story about his girlfriend and things he was dealing with her, and for most of it I was kind of like, I just didn't really care that much about her. I just wanted more horses. I felt like there was so much of an emphasis. This is like a horsey novel, so there was so much more of an emphasis on his social life and his street life, I guess, that the horses took a little bit of a backseat, I guess. So there wasn't as much just horse action that I normally love in these kind of books. There was a pony in it, or a horse in it, that he was having some trouble with, that he was trying to connect with, that had been abused. And normally in these kind of novels, when there is a horse like that, there's always this kind of build up of a relationship and a moment where the two of them kind of bond, and I didn't really get that. I felt like there was a real disconnect between Declan and this horse, and I just didn't like that, and I didn't feel any kind of any real motivation from him, I guess, to really want to connect with this horse. He kind of gave up very easily, and I just felt no connection between them, which it wasn't great for a horse book, I guess. But overall I did enjoy it, and I gave it a 3.54 stars. The next book I read was a library book, and it's 172 Hours on the Moon by Johan Harstad. This is a book I've heard quite a lot about, but I was never really sure what it was actually about. I've just heard that it was quite good, it was creepy, and this is like a YA science fiction kind of book about these 3 teenagers who win a competition or a lottery to go up to the moon. But there's this kind of mystery about this space that's been on the moon. No one ever knew that it existed. Everyone's kind of asking questions about why are we suddenly being told about this space on the moon now? What's the significance? Why do these teenagers really have to go up there? And it's kind of told through the 3 different points of the teenagers, and it was okay. I wasn't mad about it. It didn't light me on fire. It was just an interesting story. I didn't think there was anything spectacular about it. I did enjoy that the 3 teenagers that won the competition weren't American, because I find with these kind of books the teenagers are normally all from the US, and that kind of gets really old and really boring. So to have someone from France, Japan and Norway be the 3 teenagers, that was actually really, really interesting. For the kind of creepy thrillerish kind of plot, I wasn't really sold on it. I actually kind of felt like the whole thing was a little bit silly and a little bit stupid. So yeah, I wasn't as mad about that one, but okay, let me sit down. So yes, I gave this a 3 stars just because I was just a little bit underwhelmed by it. It wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. So yeah. The next book I read is a review book that I got from O'Brien's Press here in Ireland, and it is A Crack and Everything by Ruth Frances Long. This is a kind of supernatural fairy-esque book, and I was really, really pleased with this. I was actually really pleasantly surprised. This is about a girl called Izzy who's living in Dublin, Ireland, and one day she finds this kind of graffitied image of an angel on this alley wall, but she doesn't know that that's actually kind of this is kind of like almost the ashes of an angel that is after dying. So it's like the last image of this angel before it died, and it kind of ends up catapulting her, finding this graffiti and looking at it ends up catapulting her into the Fae world in Dublin. And it turns out that there's this completely other kind of side of Dublin, like these secret kind of streets called Dublin, which is an old Irish word for Dublin. And Dublin is where the fairies live, or the fairy folk live, and they are they're like not like the, you know, cutesy glittery fairies that you see in cartoons. These are like the dark fairies that have, you know, specific appetites for different things. They aren't people that you want to mess with. They would kill you sooner than look at you. And she ends up meeting this guy called Jinx, and she ends up kind of bonding herself to him in this way, and she finds out all these things about her family, and she's kind of in the middle of this kind of weird angel fairy war that's going on, and it was just really, really interesting. I really enjoyed it. I loved the fact that it was set in Dublin, but it wasn't set in like the Dublin that's like, you know, Temple Bar and all these different like real touristy places that normal Irish people don't actually go into every day. It was set in like Grafton Street and Westland Row, which is up where the train station is, and you know, it was very, very realistic for me, and I was able to recognise all the different streets because I'm obviously in Dublin every day. And I just really enjoyed being able to recognise those places. I felt like it did had a lot of respect for Irish culture and Irish myths, and Izzy brought up some old fairy folk stories that she knew that her grandmother used to tell her, that reminded her of different things that she was experiencing, and that was pretty interesting. And I just felt like this was done so much better than books like Dark Fever by Karen Marie Moning, where obviously she doesn't actually know that much about Ireland, and I felt like she actually kind of mocked Irish culture and Irish stereotypes a lot in that book and didn't really respect us very much. And for this one, obviously the author is Irish, so she wasn't going to do that. She did it better. She did it properly. This is the way this should have been done. It was really well written. It was really, really well thought out. And this is the first book in a trilogy. I have the second book. The third book is out in September. and I'm going to do a full series review on these books when I read them all, so I will let you guys know my full thought on the series until then. So I gave this a 4.5 stars. And then I read Burnt Paper Sky by Gilly Macmilan. This is also published under the name What She Knew, and it's kind of a mystery slash thriller novel, suspense novel, and it's about a little boy called Ben who goes missing one day, and it's about his mother Rachel and her experiences as the kind of police investigation ensues, and people are trying to figure out where her son is, and she's trying to figure out where his son is, and yeah. I didn't think I was going to enjoy this that much, and by the end of it I just was amazed. I thought it was really good. By about 20-30% through, I just couldn't put it down. I just had to know what happened to this little boy. I had to know if he was alive, if he'd been taken, who did it, whether, you know, what was it his... There's like a lot of suspicion on his mother, his father, other family members about whether they could have done anything to him. It showed kind of the police investigation step by step. You were getting the opinions and the feelings of his mother, but then you were getting this other point of view from one of the detectives on the case. So you were knowing where the police were with the case when they weren't telling the mother, and who they were suspecting and why they were suspecting those people and things that they were finding out. I really enjoyed that. And then there was this other little section in it where it was kind of a year forward, and you were finding out how the case had affected the lead detective on the case. And you're learning different things, how he felt about things that were going on during it, and I just thought that was really great to see that there are these specific police cases that can just affect specific police officers and detectives in different ways. You know, one might not affect them, they could feel nothing about one case, and another case could be almost their downfall and end up being a huge trigger for them, and I thought that was really, really well done. So I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. It was really, really, really good. And the last book I finished this week, I finished this morning, and it was The Butcher's Hook by Janet Ellis. And I'm really glad I was finally able to read this book, because I have been eyeing it up for quite a long time, and I was finally able to grab it from the library. And this is about a girl called Anne Jacobs, or Anne Jacob I should say. And she is kind of the daughter of this relatively wealthy man, and there are kind of these talks about her marrying off to this really horrible man that she doesn't really like, and she kind of develops a relationship with the butcher's boy, who's obviously someone that she can never really be with in real life. And it kind of goes from there, and it kind of gets dark and twisty and a bit psychotic a little bit, and she kind of brings you in a full circle, I think, Anne does. She is a very strange character. I didn't particularly like her. She's not a particularly likeable character. She's a little bit crazy. She kind of went from like 0 to 100 like really quickly, and you're just like, whoa, Anne, like, why did you suddenly go there? But I did quite enjoy this. I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. It was quite grim in places, and I'm used to, like, I've read a lot of grim books, but for this one I was just a bit like, if there wasn't anything else going on that was really, really exciting, I guess, in the book. So I gave it like a 3.5 stars, and yeah, I just think it was maybe a little bit overhyped for me in my head, and it just didn't quite live up to that hype. But as a story in itself, it is quite enjoyable, and I did like it. It just wasn't anything spectacular for me. So that is my reading wrap up this week. Please let me know what you guys think of the books that I read, what books you've been reading, if you've read any of the books I've read and what you think, or if you want to read them. And yeah, so like if you liked the video, subscribe if you like my channel. I see you guys again next time. Bye!